Hey guys, Table here. Today we're going to be taking a look at the new Azur lane commanders and kind of give you my thoughts and early impressions on these ones. Looks like you can get a few of them for free with campaign missions, assuming you have the ships that are requisite, and otherwise you can get them from the store. So we'll take a little bit of a deep dive on these here. I haven't played any of them yet, but these are my early impressions. Alright, so looking at Dunkirk, base traits, this reduced flood damage, it's not too bad as a base trait for this build. I don't know if I'd use it as an inspiration necessarily, just because usually there's other inspirations I'd prefer. Flood damage, obviously catastrophic if you're stuck with it, but if you're maintaining your damage con, cycling properly, that becomes less and less valuable. But even the best players in the world are going to get stuck with flood from time to time, and of course it's a major problem. So that's not too bad for the build for the Dunkirk commander. I don't know if I'd value it highly as an inspiration. Here you can see a lot of these commanders are basically just hybrids of the two that are in the game, and then they have additional perks. So you get your heal, you get your axi builds. I haven't tried these commanders out, by the way, but these are just kind of how I'm picturing setting them up. This is the interesting one here, though. It's unique to this commander. Shell type switch time goes way down, and it looks like it potentially be instantaneous once you get it up to 4 levels on this perk. And that's usually why I like to run AP for the vast majority of my shells, just because the switch time is so ridiculous. You basically taking yourself out of an entire reload cycle, and you're cutting down your complete damage output. Whereas just adjusting your aim point with those AP shells, usually that's going to be better in the long run, unless you're stuck with a player that you're fighting that is angling really well. But here, you have the option. If you have HE loaded and you're just hitting people with those shells, and then you see an option if you're a broadside, pop the reload. You know, this is, you don't have to pop anything. You just change the shell type, and then basically they're boom, they're in the chamber and they're ready to go. So that seems pretty strong to me. I think Dunkirk looks pretty good. The downside, I don't like the legendary perks on any of these anime ones. The battleships I really don't like. I could potentially not pick one of these. This is a non-starter for me. Repair party, I don't ever want to cut down on repair parties. Once you get +2 here, that's more of a viable option, or even the +1. You can say, okay, we're just trading that off, but do you need 5 heals in a match? Usually, probably not. I've never had a build that had 5 heals yet, but that seems a little excessive. Maybe once you get that leveled up, then you can justify putting this on there. Here, again, we're increasing the dispersion. Normally, I don't like to do that. And here, we're cutting down the rudder shift time. So we're basically canceling this perk out, and then we're adding traverse speed, which we already have the option to do here. So I just find both of these perks very bizarre. I don't like to use either of them. But again, once you get, if you had this up to level 16 and you get +2 repair party charges, then maybe you could justify putting this on here to increase the torp detectability range. Alright, next up we got Hipper. This base trait, reduced burning damage, I think that's less valuable than the reduction of the flood damage. This is a cruiser commander though, so maybe it's kind of useful on the Hipper. I don't think I'd be using this as an inspiration on too many builds though. This Admiral Hipper build is I ended up using von Mueller as my German cruiser commander. This one, his downside is you don't have Ingenious. So you can maintain the Mueller build for perks 2 through 4. Increase the HE fire chance to help the largely ineffective HE shells out a bit. Increase the AP pen, which we're trying to focus on in the German cruisers, and boost the accuracy. So those are all kind of standard here. You can also play around with more of a Lucian's if you're inclined to use Lucian's, but Lucian's main draw for me was the Ingenious perk. So Hipper, pretty straightforward. I'm not in love with the base trade, but it's not going to hurt your German cruiser builds. Again, the legendaries on these cruiser commanders, usually I'm trying to find the one that has the additional consumables and then you'd be getting an extra heal or sonar or whatever. Um, Here we're probably just going to end up using the reload cycler. You end up getting, 6% at tier 2, which is functionally maxed for the near term, which isn't horrible. This one, damage con's a little less important for cruisers, so I'd probably end up putting that in there once we get that unlocked. But not a bad build. I actually think I am going to move my build over from Von Mueller to this one just because you have most of the draws. Von Mueller up here, you're getting an extra AP pen, I think. What is it? No, just an extra fire chance. So that's really what you're giving up, which isn't a lot. I mean, the turret traverse is really good. The reduction in splash damage isn't bad, and the indicator that's telling you that you're being targeted very strong. So Hipper looks pretty good to me. Alright, so now we got British commanders. There's 3 of them. I don't know why they went so hard on the British, but here we got Hood. Keep in mind, I haven't actually played the Hood yet. I think I got it in the port. I'm 99.9% sure I do. We'll get the preview of that ship out here in the next few days. A lot of content coming out this week. Torpedo Charmer. This one's reducing the torp damage. I mean, if the torps are 10k damage, let's just say, and you get a 3% reduction, which is at rank, 6, which, so maybe 4 or 5%. You're looking at 9,700 at 3%, 9,600 at 4, or something like that. So I mean, it's not a huge, yeah, that's real HP that might keep you alive, but if you're taking 2, 3, 4 torps, I think you're boned anyways. So not bad for the Hood. We'll see how the Hood actually plays, and maybe that'll be useful for that one. But I'm not planning on using that as an inspiration here. This ship, I think, the unique perk is this one. It's the damage con cycler and a max battleship speed. Again, I haven't played the ship to see how useful that's going to be, but it doesn't jump off the page grabbing my attention. Same setup here as we had with the Dunkirk. I'm not wowed by those, but we get the heal, and we can do a straight up accuracy build. You get the accuracy here, you get some range, which is less useful than the accuracy here, and then AP damage and traverse speed. So Hood decent, but doesn't wow me. There are options though, but I always like the option to have the accuracy builds combined with the heal, which I think, just focusing strictly on the perks, I think that's quite advantageous over Cunningham. Alright, next up we got Nelson. This base trait is interesting. Reduces incoming damage to your ship. I'm assuming that's shells. I'm assuming it's torps. And probably not fire flood, because that's not incoming, that's ongoing. But it looks like you can get that to be fairly big reduction. It's probably about a 5 or 6% reduction max, which isn't horrible. You can consider that as an inspiration. The unique perk on here, you're increasing the damage of both shells, and then you're reducing the pen. So what's jumping off to me immediately without, again, testing these, is if you want to do just this purely HE spam, this could potentially be decent. I think the HE shells, we'll see. I'd have to actually test it out before, if cutting down that pen makes it so the shells aren't doing any damage, then it's not worth putting on. But under this setup, you can still switch to AP for broadside cruisers, hit those hard, but mainly focus on the HE, which I think is a lot of players that I see out there playing British battleships only shoot HE. So as long as this isn't cutting down the HE damage just because they're not penetrating the superstructure, then this could actually be quite interesting. And it looks like you're going to have a 16% boost to damage, which is very high. Again, the armor penetration, that's not something I would normally want to reduce on a shell that's shooting a lot of AP rounds, which is normally how I shoot most or play most of the British battleships. But, again, in this British battleship HE spam, that could be interesting. So like King George, and is the main one I would play like that. And then, I'd probably still wind up putting this on there, but we could get some brawler and get the reload cut down. Again, we're just trying to get out a lot of shells because of we're trying to start a lot of fires basically in this build. So I think brawler could be useful there. Here we still do have some accuracy. You could also consider a damage con cycler if you're just throwing up your hands and saying I'm not going to be able to hit anything, but accuracy is more important with the AP shells just because you're trying to pinpoint those citadels. Or AP shells, if I said HE. For HE, no big deal. Just you're trying to hit the superstructure, which is a fairly big target. And then, of course, here we have the heal. Same limitation here, but I think Nelson overall looks pretty solid to me. Alright, next up we have Belfast. I haven't taken the Belfast out for a spin yet, but we'll be doing so shortly. I'm actually going to level this up to level 11 and try it out on that ship. Basically, currently I have Fraser ready to go for the British cruisers. Here you do have an HE shell, fire chance increase, which is part of the reason I went with Fraser, just in case the Belfast showed up. He did have the option for that. But of course he doesn't have Ingenious. I do strongly like to get that on there if possible. So this build right here, pretty straight up offensive cruiser build with the addition of Ingenious. Again, kind of not exciting build in that regard. The unique perk here, you're increasing the smokescreen radius, you're reducing the ship's detectability in the smoke, which is interesting, but you're reducing the smoke generated charge. Now I haven't played the line yet to see how many smokes you get, but I don't think I'm going to be too intrigued by that just because I want to have multiple smokes, and if you only start with 2, then that could be an issue. If you start with 3, then that could be slightly more viable. I'll have to test that out once we get the builds going. Base trade, I forgot to mention. Increase concealment when shooting from inside the smoke screen. So I think on a lot of cruisers, let's just say your detectability is like 5.5. If you have this up to, and this is going up 1%. So in that instance, I think a 10% reduction would get you down to about 5, and then a 20% reduction, which would be max, would be in the mid 4s. So as ships are pushing into you, and they're going to be struggling to counter these British cruisers that are smoked up, they're going to be very powerful positions. So a lot of ships are probably going to be tempted to push into you. The closer they get, eventually they'll pick you up when you're shooting your guns. But having this extra buffer is going to give you some more wiggle room there. So overall, I think Belfast is pretty strong. I'm planning on using a combo of this commander and Fraser throughout the lines, but we'll test that out. When we get the Belfast video up in the next day or two, I'll probably be running this so we can see it in action. But it looks like a pretty strong build for me on paper. Again, same limitation though, no extra consumables here, but we'd probably end up doing a cycler on the reload. Alright, finally we have Atago. This one, to me, looks extremely strong. This is kind of a good cruiser player's build. This base trade, though, I think is worth leveling up this commander just to put on potentially all your DDs, but like the balancing factor for IJN, the Japanese destroyers, for instance, is they have really strong or really fast torpedo speeds, but they have high detectability, so the enemy will have some time to react to them. But by reducing the detectability of your torps, they have less time to react. So that's any torp that's going to improve. I mean, this is going to help for the Japanese cruisers as a base trade, and as an inspiration, I think it's going to be quite powerful. It's almost worth swapping out Swirsky and the double concealment builds that you might be running, or at least experimenting with, because I think, you're getting a 10 meter per shot. So again, at maxed, it's a 200 meter reduction, which that'll cut down on the reaction time significantly. Again, 150 meters is really, a reasonable number to get it at without, breaking the bank. That's probably a level 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there. So right off the bat, base trade's very good for both the build itself and an inspiration. You got Ingenious, which is solid. You got AP Pen. This is kind of a hybrid between Makawa and Yamamoto, obviously. I still play Makawa. I think he's very strong, but I think the addition of this thing right here is very intriguing and scary as someone playing against these things. HE damage is going up by 3% per level, so I'm guessing that's probably a 12% increase, which is good. I mean, that's solid. The fire chance is going up it looks like it's probably going to cap out at 8%, assuming these are straight lining the increase. 8% increase on, what is it, a 17% chance? Fire chance. Yeah, 17% on the Atago and Megami. So now you're up to 25% chance, which basically means every salvo you're going to be starting to fire. This seems a little overpowered on paper to me. Incoming damage to cruisers. You know, I hesitate to advocate shooting cruisers more than people already are, but these Japanese cruisers that are running this build, I mean, that's the balancing factor here. You're going to be able to pump out massive, massive amounts of damage, but if people decide to shoot back at you and hit you, then it's going to be over pretty quickly. So I think this is going to be kind of the cruiser commander's commander, so to speak. In terms of trying to set your personal damage records, this is probably the way to go. But there's going to be games where you just get straight up wiped off the map pretty quickly, and there's just not a lot you can do about it. That's not, you know, 1 or 2 citadels and you're dead right there. That's what it looks like on paper, at least. So, very intriguing by this one. As soon as I get my British cruiser commanders up and running fully, we're going to be putting a lot of points into this one and be testing it out there. So again, the main limitation for me is no extra heal slash sonar, whatever, that you get from the, I'll just show you what I'm normally talking about. The, oh yeah, he had it too, but the one that looks like this, you get extra consumables. The reduction of reload time doesn't really do much, but getting an extra heals is primarily what you're trying to do here. And for those that have radars and stuff like that, that's fully packed is always a really solid pick. But Atago here, I mean, this looks like the highlight to me. There's 3 or 4 of these commanders look pretty damn good. I think Belfast looks pretty good. I think Atago, Nelson, I'm intrigued by. I'm not massively intrigued by this one, but I think it's slightly better than Von Mueller, so I am going to wind up transferring control of the line to her. And this one looks pretty interesting as well. I want to see how that reload cycler works once you get that maxed. So, yeah, I think these are all looking pretty good here. I haven't played them yet. We'll see how they affect the gameplay itself. But on paper, at least, I think the only one I'm not massively intrigued by is Hood, but I still think it's a solid build. It's just nothing that's sending a tingle up my leg. But you do have the accuracy build with the heal option, which is solid, but you do have that here as well. But you know, again, I'm early looking at this. I think I'm just going to set this up as a fire starter and maybe focus on the accuracy a little bit less. So anyways, that's going to do it for this one, though. I'll cover these more in depth as I get them leveled up and play around with them a bit, but that's just the early look at them. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. A lot of World of Warships going all the time. Questions, comments, leave below. I do love to hear from you. And we'll see y'all later. Alright, peace.